What if I told you that the true history of the Great Mountains lies hidden beneath a thick veil of mist, mysticism, and complete oblivion? Right now, you are looking at peaks that remember the names of ancient rulers and great warriors, but today, no one dares to speak them aloud. These are not just rocks and trees. They are a graveyard of forgotten civilizations, whose secrets have been securely locked away in rocky crevices for hundreds of years. For centuries, unique and powerful cultures flourished in the heart of the Appalachians, of which modern textbooks contain only dry, fragmentary lines from dusty archives. While the rest of the world was on a path of destruction, their civilization was built on a completely different principle, not on the conquest of wild nature, but on a frighteningly precise understanding of the rhythms of this harsh and unforgiving mountain landscape. How did they manage to build their cities where even modern machinery struggles to pass today? We've grown accustomed to thinking of these mountains as wild and uninhabited. But what if ruins of unimaginable scale lie hidden beneath your feet? Why did these people suddenly vanish, leaving behind only an echo in the misty gorges? Watch this video to the end, and you'll witness an incredible discovery. You'll learn exactly how these forgotten tribes built their monumental settlements right among the sheer cliffs, and what secret technologies allowed them to survive in the clouds. Get ready, we're heading to where history meets legend. You definitely won't want to miss this. Are you ready to learn the truth about those who first carved hidden routes through the impassable ridges of the Appalachians? The Shawnee tribe ruled these forests long before the advent of familiar maps and wide stone roads. They knew every bend of the rushing rivers and every hidden valley across this vast territory by heart. Their settlements did not remain in one place for decades, but moved gradually in step with the seasonal changes in the climate. In winter, they retreated to deep valleys, where the canopies of tall trees provided reliable shelter from the frosty wind. Their summer villages were situated on broad terraces along full-flowing rivers, where the soil was soft and moist. The women cultivated vast fields, tending to the crops using the traditional method of careful hand-weeding. Men were engaged in finding new bypass routes and quarrying hard stone for making durable household tools. Houses were built from a flexible wooden frame, which was tightly covered with large sheets of bark to protect against downpours. This practical design allowed dwellings to be erected quickly and easily dismantled when it was necessary to move camp. The Shawnee were renowned for their ability to move through dense thickets and rocky scree with absolute silence. Their lightweight leather footwear allowed them to sense the terrain and avoid dry branches on the forest floor. They used natural landmarks, such as twisted tree trunks and patches of moss, to navigate in the fog. Knowledge of the routes was passed down orally, forming an invisible network of paths across the entire eastern mountain range. These secret trails connected remote communities, allowing them to efficiently exchange resources throughout the seasons. At the center of each temporary settlement was always a large, open space for holding general assemblies of the residents. Residential houses were arranged in a circle around the square, creating a sheltered inner space protected from strong gusts of wind. The ground in the square was firmly packed down by the feet of hundreds of people, turning into a hard and level surface. Here, important matters regarding the move were discussed, food supplies were distributed, and decisions were made about the start of the harvest. In the evenings, the square was lit by large bonfires, whose warmth warmed all members of the community after a long day of labor. An important part of their life was the constant gathering of wild fruits, nuts, and edible roots in the forests. In the fall, entire groups set out in search of chestnut groves, acorns, and sweet berries on sunny slopes. The harvested crop was carefully dried on flat, hot stones under the bright rays of the warm autumn sun. The dried supplies were neatly stored in special storage pits, dug into the dry earth and lined with thick bark. These supplies became a reliable staple of the diet during the long winter months, when fresh vegetation disappeared. Knowledge of the characteristics of various types of wood was a critically important skill for successfully settling in the Appalachians. Durable hickory was used to make sturdy tool handles capable of withstanding enormous mechanical stress without breaking. Lightweight cedar was used to create household utensils and small airtight containers for storing bulk goods. Flexible ash was ideal for weaving frames and crafting lightweight, portable household structures. Every material found its use, reflecting these people's deep connection to the vast forests surrounding them. The Shawnee perceived the surrounding world as a unified and highly complex system of closely interconnected natural elements. They never took more materials from the forest than was necessary to meet the needs of their community. When gathering bark for building houses, they carefully stripped only a narrow strip so that the trunk would survive. Pits dug for use were always filled back in with soil after being fully utilized, so as not to disturb the natural relief of the forest floor. This philosophy of stewardship allowed them to maintain a perfect balance and thrive in the same territory for centuries. The Shawnee left behind a vast network of trails that eventually evolved into modern highways. Their deep, intuitive understanding of the mountainous landscape still genuinely amazes researchers of the continent's ancient geography. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how these people navigated without complex modern devices. Share your detailed thoughts in the comments section right below this video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to discover even more forgotten pages of our world's history. What I am about to show you next is something that no researcher of our continent's ancient architectural traditions should overlook. The Cherokee people erected large-scale wooden structures in these mountains, radically different from any temporary shelters. Their settlements consisted of dozens of sturdy houses designed for many years of continuous and comfortable use. These structures blended seamlessly into the complex terrain, situated on artificially leveled, wide terraces on the mountain slopes. The villages were surrounded by high palisades made of thick logs, providing a reliable barrier against strong, cold winds. The foundation of any Cherokee dwelling was a sturdy structure of massive wooden posts driven deep into the ground. The space between these massive supports was tightly woven with flexible river reed branches or thin willow twigs. The resulting wooden frame was then carefully coated with a thick mixture of local clay, sand, and dry grass. After drying completely in the sun, these walls became incredibly hard and excellently retained heat inside. The roof was covered with a thick layer of tree bark or dry bundles of river grass for reliable waterproofing. The heart of every settlement was a massive council house, which stood atop a specially mounded earthen hill. This majestic round or octagonal building could accommodate several hundred adult villagers at once. The roof of the council house was supported by incredibly thick central pillars, hewn from the largest trees in the area. In the center of the spacious hall, a sacred fire always burned, never going out for many years. Long wooden benches were arranged around the fire, forming concentric circles for all full members of the community. Summer houses, on the other hand, were rectangular, spacious, and designed to allow for maximum airflow. The walls were often latticework, providing excellent natural ventilation during periods of intense mountain heat. A wide wooden canopy was usually built in front of the entrance, under which there were areas for rest and work. Here, women wove baskets, embroidered patterns, and cooked food in large clay pots. It was in the summer houses that the bulk of the community's daily life took place, from spring until late fall. The design of settlements always took into account the complex nature of the local hydrology and the frequent spring floods of turbulent mountain rivers. Villages were built on high ground to protect the heavy clay houses from sudden, destructive floods. A system of small drainage ditches carried excess rainwater away from residential buildings and public areas. Small ponds were constructed near the houses to store a constant supply of clean, fresh water in case of drought. Such thoughtful planning helped avoid many of the natural disasters typical of the Appalachians unpredictable climate. The interior design of the houses was distinguished by exceptional practicality and strict minimalism in every detail. Wide wooden benches line the walls, covered with soft mats woven from plant fibers. Numerous baskets containing dried food supplies, tools, and spare clothing were stored under these benches. Bundles of dried herbs, corn cobs, and woven sacks of selected seeds hung from the ceiling beams. Everything had its strictly designated place, which helped maintain perfect order in the small space. The effort required to construct such complex architectural complexes demanded incredible engineering knowledge for that time. Their monumental structures of wood and clay forever changed the landscape of the ancient eastern mountain valleys. How effective do you think these houses made of clay and branches were in the harsh winters? Guess what happened next as we move on to the secrets of rare metal mining in the next chapter. The secret, passed down from generation to generation, lies in the remarkable skill of working with native copper. The Monacan tribe, which lived at the eastern foothills of the Appalachians, possessed unique knowledge about finding and using this metal. They did not build massive, blazing furnaces to smelt ore, as craftsmen on other continents did. Instead, they used a cold forging method, transforming solid chunks of pure copper into elegant objects. This process required immense patience, tremendous physical strength, and incredible precision with every strike. The search for native copper was a difficult task, requiring knowledge of the hidden geological features of mountain faults. The Monacans carefully explored the banks of rushing rivers and deep, rocky scree slopes after heavy spring rains. Water often washed small pieces of pure metal to the surface, where they glistened in the bright sun. Sometimes they found large veins right inside the rocks, from which the copper had to be chiseled out with heavy stone hammers. The locations of such finds were kept strictly secret and passed down only to select members of the ancient tribe. The cold forging process itself began with lengthy preparation of the workspace and the selection of the right stone tools. A piece of copper was placed on a large, flat stone, which served as a natural and very hard anvil. The craftsman would take a smooth, perfectly rounded riverstone and begin methodically striking the shiny metal. Under the impact of hundreds of precise blows, the copper gradually flattened out, taking the form of a thin, even sheet. Periodically, the metal was heated over a campfire and slowly cooled to restore its lost flexibility. From the prepared copper sheets, the craftsmen carved the most intricate ornaments using sharp tools made of durable flint. They created wide bracelets, elegant pendants, and complex multi-layered necklaces for the elders of their tribe. Copper was also used to make prestigious status symbols, which were worn only during important ceremonies. The surface of the finished items was often covered with intricate geometric patterns, created by pressing designs into the metal with a hard-bone tool. These patterns reflected the Monacan people's ancient cosmological beliefs about the structure of the vast mountainous world around them. Copper items were not used as everyday household tools or ordinary working implements. This metal was considered too rare, soft, and sacred for rough tree felling or tilling the soil. Copper symbolized sunlight, life energy, and a direct connection to the higher natural forces of the mountains. Those who wore copper ornaments enjoyed high authority and respect among all the other inhabitants of the settlement. These items were carefully preserved within families and passed down from one generation of craftsmen to the next. The process of creating a single large copper breastplate could take several long and grueling months. The craftsman had to possess not only physical strength, but also a deep artistic vision of the future piece. The finished piece was polished using fine river sand and pieces of soft, tanned leather. As a result, the copper acquired a dazzling sheen that could be seen from afar on clear, sunny days. This sheen was considered a manifestation of the hidden spiritual power imbued in the cold metal by nature itself. Master coppersmiths held a special, honored position within the Monacan tribe's complex social hierarchy. They were exempt from many of the tribe's arduous daily duties, so they could devote themselves entirely to their rare art. Their workshops were located in special places, protected from prying eyes in inclement weather by sturdy canopies. Apprentices spent many years observing their mentors' work before being entrusted with their first piece of precious metal. This is how an unbroken tradition was formed, preserving the unique techniques of ancient metalworking in their original form. The arrival of Europeans with their cheap industrial goods forever changed the fate of the traditional copper craft. Local artisans simply could not compete with the massive influx of ready-made factory-produced metal goods. However, their stunning works are still being discovered during archaeological excavations of old mountain settlements. These artifacts stand as silent testimony to the incredible diligence and talent of the forgotten guardians of the Appalachians. Please like this video if you were impressed by the craftsmanship of the ancient Appalachian metalworkers. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about lies in their unique system of complex mountain farming. The Appalachians, with their rocky soils and steep elevation changes, seemed completely unsuitable for large-scale agriculture. However, local tribes developed an ingenious system of terraced farming that transformed the mountain slopes into flourishing gardens. They used their knowledge of water flow and slope angles to retain fertile soil on steep terrain. This system required constant engineering oversight and careful stewardship of every square meter of cultivated land. The foundation of their diet was the famous combination of three plants: corn, climbing beans, and broadleaf squash. This method of intercropping allowed them to make the most efficient use of small patches of prepared mountain soil. The tall, sturdy corn stalks served as a reliable, natural support for the slender vines of the climbing beans. The beans, in turn, actively enriched the soil with vital nitrogen, nourishing the roots of all neighboring plants. The huge pumpkin leaves covered the ground tightly, retaining precious moisture and suppressing the growth of any harmful weeds. Field preparation began long before the spring thaw, with the careful clearing of stones and deadwood from the selected plot. The soil was not plowed deeply to avoid catastrophic erosion and the washing away of the top fertile layer by heavy rains. Instead, the women formed small mounds of earth into which selected seeds were then carefully planted. The distance between the mounds was carefully measured to ensure that each plant received sufficient sunlight and water. This precise method of tilling the soil was incredibly labor-intensive, but it guaranteed a high yield even in dry years. The harvest of the long-awaited crops turned into a large-scale community event in which absolutely the entire village population participated. The corn cobs were carefully gathered into huge woven baskets and carried to places for prolonged drying. The pumpkins were carefully sorted. Some were set aside for immediate consumption, while the rest were cut into long strips for drying. The beans were carefully shelled and poured into dry clay jars, their mouths tightly sealed with wooden stoppers. The Green Corn Festival symbolized the successful end of a hard farming year and the beginning of a well-deserved rest period. Special attention was paid to preserving the best seed stock for future spring planting campaigns. The largest, healthiest, and most uniform corn cobs were never eaten, even during times of famine. They were carefully hung under the roofs of dry dwellings, where they were aired out and protected from any dampness. Pumpkin and bean seeds were dried on flat stones and hidden in the most secure and airtight shelters. The physical survival of the entire community in the next agricultural season depended directly on the preservation of these seeds. The Three Sisters system provided the tribes not only with food, but also with all the nutrients necessary for good health. Corn provided complex carbohydrates, beans supplied plant protein, and squash was a source of essential vitamins. The balance of this diet allowed people to maintain robust physical health and high endurance in harsh conditions. Could you survive on the fruits of such mountain agriculture alone throughout the entire year? In the next chapter, you will learn how these people coped with the harsh winter weather. With the onset of the long winter months, life in the Appalachian Mountains drastically shifted from its usual, unhurried rhythm. Thick fogs gave way to biting, icy winds, and the mountain passes quickly became covered in a thick layer of impassable snow. During this harsh period, the top priority for every settlement was to conserve heat and ration supplies wisely. People spent most of their time inside their fortified dwellings, engaged in quiet crafts by the glowing hearths. A successful winter depended entirely on the quality of preparations made during the warm summer and fall months. Clothing for the winter season was made with particular care from the densest and warmest materials. Wide cloaks and long capes were sewn from several layers of thick leather treated with special vegetable oils. Footwear consisted of high moccasins, the insides of which were tightly stuffed with dry, soft grass for thermal insulation. Such multi-layered gear provided reliable protection against the prickly snow and allowed for short trips between neighboring houses. Sewing and mending winter clothing took up a significant portion of women's time during the long, cold evenings. When necessary, special wide woven snowshoes were used to move through deep snow. The frame for them was made of strong and flexible ash wood, bent over hot steam to give it the desired shape. The inner part was tightly woven with thin leather straps, forming a sturdy mesh that did not sink into the snow. These devices allowed scouts to patrol the area around the village and check the condition of distant food storage sites. Using snowshoes required a certain amount of skill, but made a person incredibly mobile in the winter forest. Winter evenings were a time for the active transmission of cultural heritage and ancient traditions from elders to the young. Sitting by the burning hearth, the elders told long legends about the creation of the world, stories of great migrations, and the exploits of their ancestors. These oral traditions not only entertained listeners, but also served as a kind of guide to proper behavior in society. The crafting of small household items, such as wooden spoons or stone arrowheads, was always accompanied by instructive conversations. Thus, within the confined space of the winter home, the spiritual bond between generations was continuously preserved and strengthened. Severe frosts often caused damage to the wooden structures of houses due to the strong expansion of frozen moisture. Men regularly inspected the walls and roofs, immediately sealing any cracks that appeared with a thick mixture of clay and dry pine needles. Huge drifts of heavy snow accumulated on the roofs, which had to be cleared away with long wooden poles to prevent them from collapsing. This constant struggle against the destructive forces of nature required vigilance and a readiness for immediate collective action. Keeping the home in perfect condition was a matter of physical survival for the entire family during the coldest nights. Successfully weathering the winter trials was always seen by the community as a great victory of organization over the chaos of nature. With the arrival of the first steady warmth, the village literally came to life, and people poured out of their dark dwellings into the light. A large-scale repair of all damaged buildings began, along with the preparation of equipment for the new agricultural season. Winter in the Appalachians was a harsh teacher who did not forgive negligence, but generously rewarded hard work and foresight. The experience of surviving in the snow forged these people's iron will, making them the true masters of the mountain peaks. What if everything you were taught about ancient trade bears no resemblance to actual historical reality? It is commonly believed that the mountain tribes lived in complete isolation, securely cut off from the rest of the world by high cliffs. In reality, the Appalachians were crisscrossed by a dense network of complex trade routes connecting remote regions of the vast continent. Traders traveled hundreds of kilometers on foot, carrying heavy bundles of the most valuable goods on their shoulders. This system of exchange fostered not only economic prosperity, but also the continuous cultural enrichment of all participants. The main artery for interregional trade was the Great Indian Trail, which ran along the entire eastern slope of the mountains. This ancient route had been trodden out many centuries ago and was maintained in perfect condition through the efforts of many tribes. Along the trail were special, safe campsites where weary travelers could stop for the night and build a fire. These places were considered neutral territories, where any conflicts or disputes were strictly forbidden by the unspoken law of the mountains. Here, people speaking different languages would meet to exchange news and rare exotic items. Rare medicinal herbs and roots, growing exclusively at high altitudes, held a special place in trade. Appalachian herbalists were renowned for their deep knowledge of the properties of the local mountain flora and how to use it. Dried bundles of ginseng, medicinal barks, and rare mushrooms were carefully packed into birch bark boxes for sale. In exchange for these unique remedies, the inhabitants of the plains were willing to part with their most valuable and expensive goods. Thus, medical knowledge became an important export, strengthening the authority of mountain healers far beyond the borders of their homeland. In mountain settlements, one could often find items whose origins lay thousands of kilometers from the Appalachians. Copper plates from the shores of the Great Lakes sat alongside enormous seashells from warm southern bays. This concentration of exotic goods in remote villages clearly demonstrates the scale and complexity of ancient trade logistics. Goods changed hands dozens of times before reaching their final consumer in a mountain home. Each such item had its own unique story of a long journey through impassable forests and turbulent rivers. Trading expeditions were an extremely risky and demanding undertaking, requiring endurance and a good understanding of negotiation processes. Groups of merchants consisted of the strongest and most experienced men, capable of protecting their valuable cargo along the way. They had to be fluent in sign language, which served as a universal means of communication between different peoples. The ability to conduct lengthy negotiations while maintaining composure and respect for one's partner was valued no less than physical strength. The successful return of an expedition with a rich haul became an occasion for a grand celebration in the home village. This complex system of exchange forged strong diplomatic alliances between communities that depended on each other for resources. Marriages between members of distant tribes were often arranged specifically to strengthen vital strategic trade routes. This led to a constant blending of cultural traditions, architectural styles, and craft techniques across a vast territory. Mountain passes served not as insurmountable barriers, but as bustling crossroads where people and ideas met. What goods would you consider most valuable in the context of constant isolation among high mountains? In the next chapter, you will learn how the complex system of governance within these settlements was organized. Governance in the Appalachian settlements was based on principles that differed radically from the familiar European standards of authority. The foundation of the social structure was a strict matrilineal system, where lineage and clan affiliation were passed down exclusively through the female line. From birth, every villager belonged to the ancient lineage of their mother, not their father, as was customary in other parts of the world. The house, the land, and the harvested crops were officially considered the collective property of the elder women of the extended family. This system ensured incredible stability and continuity across generations amid the harsh and unpredictable conditions of mountain life. Women held immense authority in deciding absolutely all key issues of internal governance within the thriving community. The Council of Eldest Mothers had the final say in the distribution of agricultural plots among families. They controlled all the settlement's food supplies, deciding when to open the deep storage pits during periods of severe food shortages. Even the selection of the village's supreme leader took place only after detailed discussion and the full approval of the Women's Council. Their wisdom and life experience were recognized as the primary value, guaranteeing the survival and prosperity of the entire large community. Marriages within the same clan were strictly forbidden, which helped to constantly strengthen ties between different families. This complex, interwoven pattern of kinship created an incredibly strong social fabric, resistant to any internal conflicts. Mutual aid among members of the same clan was an absolute rule, requiring no further discussion or negotiation. Each clan had its own leaders, who represented its interests at general assemblies of the entire large settlement. Decisions concerning the life of the entire village were made exclusively on the basis of full consensus after long and thorough discussions. In these debates, the art of eloquence was valued far more highly than aggression or attempts to pressure opponents. The elders could spend hours presenting complex arguments and historical examples until all council members reached a consensus. Such a slow but reliable democratic system prevented hasty decisions that could harm the well-being of the large community. Raising the younger generation was the most important shared responsibility of absolutely all adult members of the vast family clan. Teaching boys practical skills was most often the responsibility not of their biological fathers, but of their mother's older brothers. They passed on to their nephews the secrets of navigating the forest, the rules for safely building fires, and stoneworking techniques. Girls were constantly in the company of the women of their clan, learning the intricacies of complex agriculture, weaving, and cooking. This collective approach ensured that knowledge would be preserved even in the event of the sudden loss of one of the senior mentors. Special respect was always shown to the oldest members of the tribe, who served as living repositories of ancient traditions and knowledge. Their physical frailty was fully offset by their highest social status and the right to give binding advice. This unique social structure allowed the tribes to thrive for centuries without a rigid, centralized authority. The matrilineal system fostered an atmosphere of mutual respect and a balance of interest between men and women within the community. The laws of the mountains dictated the need for unity, and the locals found the ideal formula for achieving this complex goal. Their society was built on the principles of equality, responsibility, and deep respect for their historical roots. The rivers in the Appalachian Mountains were not merely sources of clean, fresh water, but also the main transportation arteries for the inhabitants. Dense and impassable forests made traveling on foot with heavy loads incredibly slow and physically exhausting. Waterways allowed for the rapid covering of vast distances, connecting remote mountain valleys with the broad plains to the east. However, mountain rivers were treacherous. Calm stretches were suddenly replaced by turbulent rapids and deadly whirlpools. The ability to read the water and steer a heavy boat in these conditions was considered a mark of the highest navigational skill. The primary means of water travel were massive canoes, hollowed out from the solid trunks of giant forest trees. To craft them, the smoothest and thickest trunks of tulip wood or white oak, growing near the shores, were selected. The process of building a boat was incredibly labor-intensive and relied on an ingenious combination of controlled fire and stone tools. Craftsmen slowly burned out the core of the tree, constantly scraping away the charred wood with sharp stone scrapers and hard shells. The thickness of the canoe's walls was strictly controlled so that the boat would be light enough to carry, but sturdy enough to withstand impacts against rocks. Steering such a heavy, solid wood vessel in a swift current required perfect coordination of movements among all the paddlers. People used long, wide paddles carved from flexible ash wood to maneuver between boulders jutting out of the water. The most experienced helmsman always sat at the front, closely watching for changes in the water's color and the direction of deep currents. A single wrong stroke of the oar could lead to a collision with a rock, and the loss not only of the valuable cargo, but also of the boat itself. Navigating through narrow canyons became a true art of balancing on the brink of disaster. The boats were used not only for long-distance trade, but also for the daily gathering of wild aquatic plants along the marshy banks. In the shallows, women gathered the nutritious roots of water lilies and the stems of wild reeds to weave soft mats. People used boats to reach remote islands where sweet berries and rare medicinal herbs grew in abundance. Canoes made vast territories accessible that would have been impossible to explore effectively on foot alone. Water was not a barrier, but a reliable guide to the most hidden corners of the boundless eastern forests. Keeping the boats in good condition required constant maintenance and periodic minor repairs to the wooden sides. When cracks appeared, they were carefully filled with hot pine resin mixed with finely chopped plant fibers. In winter, the canoes were always pulled far ashore and turned upside down to protect them from the destructive effects of ice. The service life of a well-made boat could span several decades, provided it was treated with care and stored properly. Each vessel was of immense value to the entire community and was considered the collective property of a specific clan. Many modern geographical names of rivers in this region derive precisely from the ancient words of these forgotten tribes. They name the streams based on the color of the water, the speed of the current, or the presence of certain types of trees along the banks. These names served as a kind of navigational code, conveying important information about the nature of a particular body of water to future generations of travelers. The language of the rivers was a universal means of communication for all inhabitants of the complex mountainous landscape. Waterways bound them together, transforming scattered villages into a single civilization. The art of making clothing and textiles in the Appalachians was not limited to the purely practical aspect of protection from the cold. Clothing was a vital means of visual communication, reflecting a person's social status, clan affiliation, and aesthetic preferences. To impart vivid colors to fabrics and leather, local craftswomen developed a highly complex technique for producing durable, natural dyes. They used hundreds of types of plants, roots, tree bark, and minerals to achieve a rich palette of deep, saturated hues. The dyeing process was long, labor-intensive, and required strict adherence to ancient chemical formulas. The most popular and sought-after color has always been deep red, symbolizing vitality, fire, and physical endurance. To obtain it, women gathered the roots of a special plant, sanguinaria, which grew in the dense shade of damp forests. The roots were carefully cleaned, dried, and ground into a fine powder on flat stones before the boiling process began. The powder was boiled for a long time in large clay pots with water until the liquid took on a thick, rich, blood-red color. Prepared threads or pieces of soft leather were carefully lowered into this boiling mixture to ensure even absorption of the dye. The black dye used to create contrasting patterns was extracted from the bark and leaves of the black walnut tree. This natural dye was so durable that it did not wash out even after numerous washings in cold river water. To fix the color on the fabric, a special fixative was used, the ash of certain tree species mixed with clean water. The fabric could be soaked in this solution for hours, acquiring incredible durability and a deep charcoal black hue. This color was often used to dye elements of men's clothing intended for long winter treks. A bright yellow color was extracted from the bark of the smooth sumac and various wildflowers blooming in late spring. The process of obtaining the yellow hue was more delicate and required slowly heating the liquid without vigorous boiling. Yellow fabrics were often associated with sunlight and were used in clothing for joyful spring festivals. By mixing yellow decoctions with the juices of other plants, craftswomen produced a variety of shades of green and orange. Each woman had her own secret proportions, which allowed her to create completely unique colors for her family. The basis for weaving was the strong fibers of wild hemp and the inner bark of certain types of young trees. The fibers were soaked for a long time in running water, then beaten with wooden sticks until they became soft and pliable threads. From these threads, dense rectangular claws were woven on the simplest vertical looms, serving as the basis for capes and skirts. The weaving process was very slow. Creating a single large piece of fabric could take several weeks of painstaking labor. Each finished item was a true treasure, requiring constant, careful maintenance and proper storage. Leather garments also underwent intricate decorative treatment after the tanning and dyeing processes were completed. Intricate geometric patterns were often applied to soft reindeer hide using fine brushes made of stiff plant fibers. The designs carried deep meaning, depicting symbolic rivers, mountains, the sun's path, and the emblems of ancient family clans. Sometimes the edges of the garments were adorned with long fringe, which not only fluttered beautifully while walking, but also helped rainwater run off quickly. These garments were perfectly suited to an active life in the forest, while remaining remarkably beautiful. The art of clothing decoration reached incredible heights thanks to the use of wild porcupine quills, pre-dyed in various colors. These stiff quills were soaked in water, flattened with stones, and carefully sewn onto the leather using thin tendons. Artisans created intricate three-dimensional patterns from the quills on belts, moccasins, and ceremonial pouches for storing valuables. This technique required exquisite precision and immense patience, transforming everyday objects into true works of art. Such adornments served as the primary indicator of the owner's wealth and high social status within the larger community. Knowledge of plant properties and dyeing techniques was passed down through the female line, adhering to strict rituals of secrecy. Each generation added its own observations to the collective pool of experience, constantly refining the recipes for vibrant dyes. These techniques demonstrate a deep understanding of the complex chemistry of natural materials and the ability to extract beauty from the surrounding forest. The clothing of the Appalachian people was as vibrant and multifaceted as the mountains themselves during the Golden Autumn. The art of color became an integral part of their rich cultural identity, captured in ancient artifacts. When the first European settlers began moving deep into the Appalachians in large numbers, they encountered a civilization that was completely incomprehensible to them. They did not see the familiar stone castles or wide paved squares characteristic of the old continent, and they found vast wooden cities that blended seamlessly with the surrounding forest landscape and were hidden behind the trees. The newcomers could not fully grasp the complexity of the social structure or the ingenuity of the local people's agricultural solutions. The clash of two completely different worlds marked the beginning of the end for the ancient guardians of these mist-shrouded mountain peaks. Forced resettlement permanently severed the deepest spiritual bond that had formed over centuries between the people and the mountains. The inhabitants of the Appalachians were forcibly compelled to leave their sturdy clay houses and move to the barren western plains. The abandoned terraced fields quickly became overgrown with wild brush, and the majestic wooden council houses collapsed under the weight of winter snows. The trails once trodden by generations of traders and elders were covered by a thick layer of fallen autumn leaves and vanished. Nature swiftly and ruthlessly reclaimed the territories that had been so long and carefully cultivated by human hands. Despite the physical disappearance of the settlements, the legacy of these tribes remains forever encoded in the very landscape of the Appalachians. Their methods of intercropping are still actively studied by modern agriculture. Ancient trade routes became the basis for the construction of highways that today connect major cities on the East Coast. Knowledge of the medicinal properties of local herbs became an important part of traditional American medicine, saving the lives of many people. They left behind not ruins, but invaluable experience of harmonious existence in the most challenging natural conditions. Today, walking along the quiet trails of the national parks in the eastern part of the continent, it is easy to overlook the traces of this great history. The remains of earthen mounds and old thickets of wild apple trees are all that remain to remind us of the once thriving, populous villages that stood here. However, in the rustling of the trees and the roar of the turbulent mountain rivers, one can still catch echoes of ancient legends. These mountains preserve the memory of those who knew their true names and understood their harsh yet just nature. Their history teaches us that the true greatness of a civilization is measured not by stone, but by the ability to live in balance with the world. Fog descends once more upon the Appalachian ridges, concealing the remnants of ancient settlements and carrying away with it the final secrets of forgotten guardians. What do you think of today's episode on the unknown tribes of the Eastern Mountains? Be sure to subscribe to the channel so we can continue to reveal the hidden pages of the world's fascinating history for you.